And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Tales from the Loop, the board game. Now this is based on, so there's a TV series for Tales from the Loop, and that's based on some pictures of, and I think this is kind of based on the pictures, not the American TV show, I'm not quite sure. But either way, you're a bunch of kids in Sweden or Norway, and they live near this machine. I think it's a Hadron Collider, some machine, and then weird things happen. Now, I watched some of the episodes of the TV show, and I found them to be stunningly boring. It was very, very slow paced. I know some people liked it, and it was very pretty, but wow, it moved at a glacier pace. That being said, I was intrigued by this. This has not come out from, your typical board game publisher, so I was kind of curious, what's this game going to be like? So what the game is it's an adventure game. You're one of these kids who lives in this area. There's machines that go around and do some daily tasks and things. Some of these machines are a little wonky and something is going on, and you as a group got to figure it out. But also, you have school, and also you have parents who demand you be home by a certain time. So let's see how the game plays. I'm not going to go over every part of this game. I'm just going to give you some of the base concepts so you can see how it works. You're going to be playing a character. So here we have Sasha the computer geek, Claire the bookworm. You notice that there's a background color. That's because they're good at one thing. They're not good at another thing. So here, Nils is brave, but also weak. Alex is brave, but also dense. Lena is charming, but also slow. Jonas is charming, but also skittish. Stefan is tough, but also dense. And Veronica, the metalhead, is quick, but skittish. And so depending on the number of players, you'll put something in here. And essentially, when you make a test with the skill they're good at, you're going to be rolling 5 dice. If you make a test with the skill you're not good at, you're only rolling 2 dice. So that's that. You have a couple other things here on the card itself where you'll be keeping track of. For example, you'll be keeping track of how good you are with your parents, and that's going to depend on if your parents pick you up in a car and take you places. If not, you can be grounded, which will use up some of your action cubes. You can be exhausted, upset, scared, injured. There's different things can happen to you. The rest of this is where you'll have your actions up here. You'll place them here when you use them, and you'll be taking various actions on the board. The game is going to be played over 2 weeks, and you'll notice that there's a normal week and then there's the weekend. And this is good because as kids, you're going to be starting in school, and there's different locations you can go to. You'll be taking actions to move, or you can go from one bus spot to another bus spot, or you can have your parents take you anywhere, although it irritates them a little bit with you. There are spots that are more dangerous than others to go to, and these giant robots, or small robots, depending on what they are, will be wandering around the board, and there's a possibility that they might ignore you, but there's also a possibility that they'll attack you or do other kinds of crazy things. There's some dials up here, Insight and Enigma. Those will be spinning up and down based on you failing tests. So if you fail a test, Enigma will go up, which is not particularly good. That's this one here, the orange one. But when you succeed at tests, the Insight will go up. And so how do you win this game? Well, that is based on the scenario. So each scenario is winnable by a different means, which you figure out as you go through. It will tell you where machines go. There will be some location tiles on the board, and a location tile is just going to give you something that you can do at a specific location. So for example, this one here says the spiders come out, and so you would just put this on the board to show that when you go to that location, you can try to make a machine ride, and you can ride on top of a machine across the board. It will show you what kind of rumor cards are in the game. There's piles of rumor cards that you will go through and take different tests, and so they have different icons on them. It will show you what kind of school cards you use, and then each scenario comes with specific cards you're going to go through to try to finish that scenario. Kids are going to have a chance to get various items, or you may even start with an item over the course of the game. You might, for example, start with a pocket knife. And these items are color-coded because they'll help you with specific tests. You can also combine them to get items you might need with other things. There's also a deck of chores, and the kids are going to have chores that you need to do. You need to accomplish this chore. You have a week to finish your chore, but if you don't do it, something bad is going to happen to you. If you do finish your chore, there's something good, but usually it's more about avoid the punishment for not doing your chores. At the beginning of a day, there's a school event that you'll have to take care of, so and it depends what players first, whatever who do it. So here's detention. You have to try to talk yourself out of detention, or your teacher can get in trouble, just make you spend some time. So you have to keep an eye out for that. But after that, school's out, and you're going to be taking actions, and players will be taking actions and move around the board. There's going to be rumor cards. These rumors are kind of set in very specific spots. You can see where they are on the board. And so when you go there, you'll have to make some sort of test for that card. And this shows you what kind of test it is and tells you what happens when you succeed and fail. So not only are you doing rumor cards, but you're also doing things that actually are specifically part of your scenario, which is how you win the game. Many times over the game, you're going to have to make a test. And you're going to have normally 3 dice that you'll roll in a test, although that can go down to 2 if it's your weakness, up to 5 if it's your strength, and other things can change and add dice. You can have up to 8 dice or as few as 1 die. And when you take a test, you just need to get a 6, unless you need to get more than 1 6. So for example, that's a failure. Well, let's add 5 dice. It's my strength. Still a failure. Maybe I can re-roll dice. Man, I haven't rolled a 6 yet, but I will. There we go. Success. And so that's kind of the way tests work in this game. And there are various things that can happen. I mentioned moving around the board, taking different things, but I also have to mention each kid has their own location on the board that's their home, and you need to be home for dinner each night. If you don't, negative things will happen. You could be grounded and lose some actions on the next day. The machines are out on the table too, and it talks about how they're going to move and transport. It will tell you what they do, though this one, for example, is going to avoid. But they might turn into this, and they're going to, when you try to avoid them, you have to do a specific test to avoid them, or they're going to come after you because the machines can go bad. And then there's also kind of a little mini game included where you're reprogramming them, and you can even hack them and ride them around at different occasions. If you complete your thing, you win the game. I'm not showing you the other side of the card because the other side shows you how to win the game. And basically, how do you lose? Well, by not winning. By which I mean if the 2 weeks go by and you haven't accomplished winning, then you've lost. And each scenario has a bunch of cards. You'll notice it says B7 and the other numbers on there. You're just going to go through these cards in order, and you'll be doing that while doing the rumors. And that's how you play. For much of the game, the components are great. I will say that occasionally if they don't mention the leather location, knowing the names of them, I found a little bit hard to read. But other than that, I mean, these mechs, which I have, they're pre-painted in my copy, look great. I like these cards. The card quality is great. There is a lot of text on these cards, for sure. The dice are fine. I mean, again, they could just be 6-sided dice. But there is a nice summary card. However, I have to tell you, the rule book is pretty terrible. I mean, it looks like a manual going through this, and the game is not as complex as this rule book makes it seem to be. I think if someone would play this who doesn't play a lot of games, they would be struggling to understand how to play the game at all. I really struggle with a lot of it. There's another book here, The World of the Loop, and that's cool. It shows some of the art and stuff that this is all based on here. There's a plastic insert that holds everything, but there is a lot of pieces, and one of the problems the game has is, since most of the cards are double-sided and all, separating them, figuring out which card goes where, which symbols work on which things, it's kind of a pain to sort out and put away. I found there's a lot of pieces involved in this. You can see them spread out all over the table, and set up and tear down is going to be a bit of a chore, just because each scenario is different. So there's several problems with this game, but the biggest one I'll just get out of the way is that the game is kind of boring. Like I said, remember I said that the show was kind of slow and slogging, and that's kind of how this game feels. Like you're a kid, and then you're in school, and I played this with kids, my kids, to see, you know, like, oh, maybe they can kind of get into this theme, but they were not thrilled that it was like, hey, do your homework. Woo! I mean, we don't need that in a game, do we? And it's just kind of weird, this chore you have to finish. So the game has this weird aspect. They're like, we want to show kids going off an adventure, but also you have to balance your home life. Yeah, but when your home life is essentially just spend time doing this, spend time walking the dog, spend time doing your homework, spend time taking swimming lessons, that's not interesting. You're just spending time. So I found that to be kind of and the story is kind of you just find random things at different places, and then you follow the storyline and the robots are breaking down or going crazy, and that sounds more exciting than it is. The other problem is that this game has this overwhelming complex rule book I showed you, which is a lot. There's lots of rules, but it's not complex at all. And the tests are very random. I have a big problem with that. So a game you could compare this to, believe it or not, is Arkham Horror. Arkham Horror is a game when you're in Arkham, the city of Arkham, and Cthulhu's around and stuff. And in that game, you go around and all kinds of things happen, and you take tests. You have to pass these tests by rolling 5s and 6s on dice. There are ways to make that go to a 4, 5, and 6, and there are ways to increase the number of dice you roll, but you're trying to get 5s and 6s. When you change a test in this one, which is the same thing, you're going around, it's not Cthulhu horror, it's robot, slightly horror. You only need to get a 6. That makes the test incredibly random. It's very easy to roll 5 dice and not get a 6. You're going to fail tests in this all the time. And there are ways to mitigate dice rolls and add more dice and stuff, but it's just not that interesting. You just go around and, hey, we failed the test here. Hey, we passed the test here. And honestly, before the scenario kind of kicks in high gear, if you're going to do the scenario, you're kind of on rails. Go do that. Go do that. And then there's these bonkers, you run into a robot and you feel like you have to look up a whole set of rules. And how do we deal with this robot? Do we avoid it? Do we do this? How do we reprogram it? And all that is like, all that work just to walk by a robot. And when you mix that, then I found a test. Oh, we failed. And now your parents mad at you. And now they're frustrated. And it just felt like we weren't making any real meaningful decisions over the course of the game. But also the story was just kind of like, and now you go home and go to bed. And I don't know. I mean, I guess for some people, like the pictures, the art this is based on is fascinating. I love the art. You look at it and go, ooh. But the idea of kids' daily lives, and when I go back and remember my childhood, I don't remember large swaths of it because each day was very similar. I did this, I got up, we had fun, I went to bed, whatever. But it's not the stuff stories are made out of. We just kind of had fun. Here you have like, oh wow, stories, you're going to go with a nuclear reactor and find a crazy robot shooting at you. But the game never feels like that's what's happening. It feels like, oh, I went here, I took the bus over to here, then I went here and I had to do homework. And now the robots, I rolled some dice, I failed that. Okay, your turn. So I just feel like this is a lot of much ado about nothing. There's all these pieces, all this stuff, but the actual game itself isn't particularly interesting. So for me, this is a pass at this point. I wanted to like it more than I did, but the rules overhead, setup time, complexity, difficulty of everything going on, then combined with a fairly random, and I felt mundane experience, just doesn't make it one I want to get. So that's Tales from the Loop, the board game. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time. Dice Tower Judgment, it's just boring.